Part 2, picking up where we left off. We had to figure out a way to assimilate the hordes of inferior people coming into the country. So in 1892, a socialist came up with the Pledge of Allegiance. And it was the Youth Companion that put this event on, starting the Pledge of Allegiance in October in honor of Columbus Day. That's right. We started doing the Pledges of Allegiance to honor Columbus. And this pledge had its own salute that we used until 1942. And we stopped using it for obvious reasons. Look how fucking weird that is, dude. Ugh. But once we started these traditions, and once we got the hordes of inferior people that some might equate to in a foreign invasion assimilated into the culture, there's always another reason to keep these fucking traditions going, to keep this ritual going, right? You know, World War I, World War II, all that stuff. You know, in World War I, they used the, the patriotism thing as, Bernard Weisberger put it, unity in the fight against the Kaiser and to inoculate against Bolshevism. So I find it rather comical that we literally created the Pledge of Allegiance and the whole respect thing for the flag simply because we were trying to get hordes of inferior people coming in here so they would assimilate to the fucking country. And sometimes when people offend the flag, say like a Tom McDonald person, an immigrant who comes here, are usually the people who tend to be the most offended. But when it comes to patriotism, I think of what men like Ambrose Bierce said, who was a very influential writer in his day. Patriotism, incombustible rubbish, ready to the torch of anyone ambitious to illuminate his name. In Dr. Johnson's famous dictionary, patriotism is defined as the last resort of a scoundrel, with all due respect to an enlightened but inferior lexicographer. I bet to submit it is the first. So I'll give you a little context and break this quote down. When he's referring to Dr. Johnson, he's talking about Samuel Johnson, who came out with a quip in 1775 talking about using patriotism as a last resort for a scoundrel to try and get people together for a common cause when all else has failed. But Ambrose Bierce argued it's not the last resort of a scoundrel, but the first resort of a scoundrel. So in metaphorical language, the combustible rubbish is likened to patriotism to flammable trash, something volatile, unstable, and easily manipulated. It's not a noble ideal, but a dangerous fucking tool. And the metaphor suggests that self-serving individuals, politicians, demagogues, whatever, exploit patriotism to burnish their reputations or gain power. Illuminating their name implies using patriotic rhetoric as a shortcut to glory, masking selfish motives under the guise of national pride. Say something like this, for example. And we as regular fucking people, as normal fucking people, have to critique blind patriotism like that, what you see of this Mr. fucking Adam Calhoun guy and Tom McDonald. Because this quote here is warning that uncritical allegiance to a nation can be weaponized. Leaders invoke patriotism to justify wars or oppressive policies, to silence critics. Sit in case someone doesn't stand or something. You might kick their fucking seat out from underneath them or something like that. They label it as unpatriotic or treasonous. And all this stuff with the fucking patriotism like Donald Trump is when he's out there in the front with his nationalism, it really distracts people from the corruption and incompetence that is his administration. So the key message that people need to take away from people as Adam Calhoun or Tom McDonald or any of these fucking right-wing influencers that are just selling fucking America to make a buck, or Trump using his fucking patriotism to further his own agenda, the key message that everyone needs to take away is that patriotism, when divorced from moral scrutiny, becomes a facade for self-interest. True love of country implies that it requires questioning, not mindless adherence to what the fucking everyone else is going on around you. So when you start seeing fucking blind patriotism going around like this and being spread like a fucking disease, like a fucking poison, you have to ask yourself, who fucking benefits from this? Because the people who are benefiting from this understand the power of rhetoric. This quote highlights the abstract ideals like patriotism are easily co-opted by those in power, emotionally charged symbols like the flags, like the anthems, like the Pledge of Allegiance. And all of that thought process overrides rational fucking thought. So what us as citizens need to start doing is start recognizing ethical patriotism from nationalism, right? You don't need to condemn the love of country. That's not a thing. You don't condemn your love of country outright, but we need to distinguish it from jingoism. Ethical patriotism involves holding a nation to its ideals. Nationalism demands loyalty regardless of its actions. So what I'm asking for is, what I'm advocating for is a call for skepticism. Patriotism should not be a blanket excuse for ambition or a substitute for critical thought. By flipping Johnson's fucking phrase here, it underscores that the greatest threats to justice often come draped in a fucking flag. The quote urges vigilance against those who equate dissent with disloyalty and reminds us that true patriotism lies in demanding accountability, not blind obedience. As George Washington once said, we have to guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism.